delighted to be here this morning to share my story with you. And I just want to start by saying I was sitting in the seats that you're sitting in 3 years ago in 2012. And my story begins with a year later, the 10th of January 2013. I want you to picture, if you will, what I was seeing. It was the first day that I'd moved from a couple of iPads in the school to nearly 1,200 iPads in the school. At break time, the bell went. I came out of my office and I went into the main hall where the students were getting their drink and their food, and I saw a sea of iPads out. And I thought, was I ready for this? Was that what I thought it would be? It was like Christmas morning 1,000 times over. I can tell you, I felt nervous, but above all, I felt really excited. The journey had begun, the challenges were in front of me, and it was really important, I felt, that I made this work for the students. So my story is one of implementing a one-to-one iPad scheme in the school, as I say, nearly 1,200 iPads. And this story is about transformation. It's not about change. I've been a head teacher for many years, and I've done lots of different things in schools, changing structures and systems. But this was transformational for a number of reasons. It had the hugest potential of anything I'd ever done before in a school. As I said, it was really, really exciting for me. But above all, it encompassed every single member, not only of our school community, but of the wider community as well. Throughout the next 25 minutes or so, I'm going to share the highs with you, the triumphs, the amazing stories that I saw along the way. And I hope that also during my story, there'll be some things that will help you in making your decisions about how you might want to proceed in your schools and institutions. Alongside the school story, there's also a personal story to this. As leaders, we know we take things very personally. I drive to school 110 miles there and back every day along the motorway system from London to Bristol. I'm about halfway along, and then down to Clevedon, which is just past Bristol. And I can tell you from my personal journey, I had plenty of thinking time, and that was really, really useful. So what did it do in essence? You can see two pictures on the screen. The school before, you'll note they're in polo shirts as their uniform. The school after, very different. The key for me was to start to share the learning experiences. We've just heard about collaboration. That was one of the key reasons where I wanted to develop the iPad scheme, but it was also about individual students. And that was the crux of everything that we wanted to do. Share the learning experiences and really provide the students with the skills to do that. Now, in physical education, for example, video analysis is a common feature. Students can assess each other, analyse, they can provide feedback immediately. Students can then have another go at that. And more importantly, they can create an electronic portfolio. They can start to talk about their learning at home when they get home, show their parents what they've been doing. It's transformed the way physical education is taught at the school. Now, Clevedon, I know it's probably not one of the areas that you recognise. Clevedon is between Bristol and Weston-super-Mare. It's stuck in a little mild bit of land between the motorway M5 and the Bristol Channel. It's a state school. We have 1,200 students at the school. It's a normal school. The school was built in 1961. Nothing really was developed. It was developed for 500 students. As I say, I have 1,200 now. We had an extra bit in 1970, and then the only extra bit of building we had was when all the windows fell out of the science block, and the authority said, yes, you can have another science block as well. So we're just an ordinary school, is the key message. Now, when I arrived, unfortunately, in 2004, just before, the school had had a really poor inspection. Things were not going well. We were near the coast, and we were coasting. The school was built for the benefit of staff. What was easier? What were the logistical systems that were easier? And I had to turn that around very quickly. So our theme of student-focused achievement, written on every document that we produced, turned the school from one of being passive, students saying, tell us what to do and we'll do it, to one of proactive students, wanting them to come up with the ideas and the systems. And we really drove student leadership. And we restructured the pastoral systems to make sure they started to take responsibility in their learning. Over the next few years, we worked really hard with the teachers on the teaching frameworks, and the benefits were seen in 2011, where we managed to get the highest grade in the inspection, outstanding. However, we still knew, and the inspectors told us, that standards and teaching and learning could be improved. For me as the leader, what I didn't want to happen was that all the staff felt, we've got to the top, we can all relax. I needed to get the impetus back again to make sure we were improving even more. The joy and elation, I had to let that last a couple of days, but then we were back on track. And the key for me was, had I actually engaged the students in the learning enough? And the key question came out of that, how can I put the learning in the hands of the students to take us to that next level? Now, I know that iPads can do that. You will know today that iPads can do that. The question for me as the leader was, how? How do I get this in every learner's hands? This slide shows the research program that we went through. As I say, go back to January 2012 was when I really started to investigate. I knew iPads were the key. How was I going to do that? And this structure takes us through the infrastructure required, the protocols, and the expectations as well. And I'm going to take you through my journey along these. The first one was about vision. The key was access for every student. I needed to give them all the same opportunities. The inspectors had commended us on our inclusion. We take any students in our community and we give them the best that we possibly can. The other thing was to engage them in the learning. As I said, we needed to move from passive to active, so engagement was critical. We have looked at other devices, but many of them created barriers. They were big, they had things that were in the way, there were barriers physically in the classroom, and there were certainly barriers financially for me as well to keep upgrading those systems. And the other thing that was really important to me, being a small coastal town, was the very close-knit community. I wanted a family learning community experience as part of that vision, and that was critical. Yes, we had a couple of interactive whiteboards, and only a couple, but it was all about moving the control in the classroom from the teacher only in control to one of a shared learning experience. We wanted the teachers to guide the learning pathways for the students so they could start going off in different directions. We wanted students deciding how to tackle a task in many different ways. We wanted immediate access. I'm sure some of you are facing the things I was, where teachers were trying to book a computer room. And they were finding, I've got to wait 2 weeks, my learning path has now been distorted because I'm waiting until I get into the computer room. Once I'm in the computer room and we've done what we need to do after 10 minutes, I'm going to stay for the whole lesson because I'm not getting in here again for another 2 weeks. And the whole learning process was distorted. So in my vision, I needed to be clear. Why? I know when you're probably planning, always come back to the why. Why? It's all about the learning, was the answer to that question. The next part is the infrastructure, and this is vital. Finance and the network were critical. At Clevedon School, our network was terrible, really unstable, and it had been for many years. The teachers had lost confidence in the system. Would it work? Would it not work? When it did work, the learners became very passive. In front of the screens, the teacher stepped back, and it all was just happening. Learning was dumbed down, I'm afraid, to the lowest possible level. In January 2012, sitting there, I was listening to Abdul of the ESSA Academy, and he blew my mind. The possibilities that the iPad can bring, turning those passive learners into active learners. I was watching iPads being thrown from one side of the auditorium to the other, and students immediately seeing the results of that. And in the afternoon, I spoke to the students in the breakout rooms, and I was absolutely certain this is the way to go forward. But again, I needed to get a system and an infrastructure that would give the teachers the confidence again to start using this. This diagram shows you where Clevedon is a little bit better. And in we go. So I started talking about networks, and someone said to me, John, we had a network, a Wi-Fi, a wireless system installed before you arrived. But unfortunately, the company said, because we've got lots of woods around, it wouldn't work very well. Right. I had watched Abdul and about 6 or 8 different presenters come along, they plugged in different things, it just worked. Abdul said it just worked. No more F5 button, which one's working to get the projector working. It was really important that I had an expert team around me to find out about systems. But one thing was clear, everything's moving so fast, I needed to future-proof. I needed to get the best I possibly could. Now, I'm not an IC techie. You might have picked that one up already. I'm not. But I've learnt a lot about coverage, but more importantly about density. Density makes it work. Coverage, we've got Wi-Fi in the woods now, would you believe? And it works. But we have 4 access points in the hall like this, so that when we've got 250 in there, it works, but all of them at the same time. So density is really important and something you need to think about. It was really important as well that I did know about the technical side, because that's what the parents started to ask me about when we were talking about launching. Finance. We had no money in our back pocket and no one was giving us any money. So it was clear to me I had to find a different way. And that's where, and I'll explain later, a family partnership scheme was devised. The school and the families working together to make this possible. So the shared learning idea had come through. The flipped learning that we all have heard about came through. So learning was now being put in the hands of the learners, but also in the hands of the families. And that was really important to me. So engaging the parents was the next task. And now we're able to engage the parents through the iBooks that Peter was talking about. It's a visible learning journey for the parents, for their children, and they can talk to them along that journey and share that experience with them. Learning has never been more visible than it is now at Clevedon School. The next area was culture. Peter talked about schools banning technology. Well, over many years, we've had the mobile phone debate. Do we allow them in school? Do we not? Are they in the pocket? And so on. Very, very critical. But I knew that technology is moving really fast. I have a duty to the students to give them the life chances in the future, but also to make sure they are safe. And the decision for us was, let's put the technology on top of the table in the classroom, not in the pocket or underneath. Let's see it, and then start to give the students the responsibility and the choices. That was the culture that I wanted to develop. But it doesn't happen overnight. In our process from that 2004, when I talked about the journey of student leadership, we changed the school. We used traditional with modern. We built a house system, 4 communities in the school. We mixed the tutor groups into mixed ages, so it was a family feel. The whole theme was to belong and to see students, supporting students, and the teacher guiding them along. I knew that I'd got somewhere when one of the school governors spoke to me and he said, we had our friends visit over the weekend and their son said to my son, which school do you go to then? He said, I belong to Clevedon School. And I knew immediately when he swapped to belong, I go to I belong, that they really felt that identity. That was really important to me before I started putting thousands of mobile devices in their hands. Pre-iPad, student leadership was about the pastoral side. Post-iPad, student leadership is also about the learning side. If we move to the community, as soon as I started the research of I'm going to have more than 2 iPads in the school, it's probably going to be over 1,000, the community immediately called us the iPad school. You've got to be ready for that sort of community engagement. Some people will not know what they're talking about because they've not been in a school for 25, 30 years, and others will think it's really positive. You need to deal with the parents and engage with them, and that's what I learned very, very carefully. The parent meetings themselves, we did in different ways. We had the 250 at once, and we showed them what an iPad could do. And that was very easy. because they were a generation that hadn't grown up with mobile technology. The wow factor was amazing. But we also held meetings where there were only 20 parents there, so we could really do a one-to-one approach. And the questions that came then was, how are you going to use the iPads? What are you going to do about e-safety? And what about the safety of my child going to and from school with an iPad in their bag? Because it was theirs, 24/7 was the vision. They would own it. The other thing I had to be careful was that I didn't get carried away. Do not promise the world, I kept telling myself. Promise what you can deliver. Make sure it's reasonable. Once we had launched the project, it was then important to keep the communication with parents going. We have a site called Clevedon, and all the different research is on there and what we're doing, and we keep parents informed about what's happening. And then we came to the last and most difficult area, the teaching and the learning. What was the impact in the classroom? Over many years in teaching, I'm afraid to say, 30 plus, I started with a bander machine. I've seen many strategies come into school and teachers put them to the side and say, no, I'm carrying on with what I want to do. So I knew it was really important. The classroom was the key for us. So we had to start thinking about how to integrate, and teachers went on different professional development sessions, and we started to talk to them about the teaching and learning frameworks. As I went round the school, the doors were now open. Teachers were inviting me in, and they were telling me what learning was happening, which was really good. They began to own the vision. It was important that when I was talking to them about the iPad, that they saw it as a tool to enhance the learning. It was part of their pencil case, another item on the desk that they could choose to go to. You can imagine, as I was going through that research, the questions, the miles and miles of the motorway, I kept asking questions. I needed some help, so I decided to get a dog. I got a dog. I needed someone to listen to me, someone who wouldn't answer back too much, and reflect on what my thinking was. We're now at summer 2012. It's a chance to launch. I could launch these devices now. I was still uncertain though. I wasn't sure in my own mind whether we were ready, whether that learning experience was quite there yet. Had the learning control been moved enough from the teacher to the shared learning? I wanted the vision to drive the project, not the technology to just sort of see what happened. I wanted to be more certain. My dog wasn't sure, but I felt we weren't ready. And I decided, no, I'm going to give the staff some more time. So all the staff got iPads. And then they had a further opportunity to really embed the skills and understanding about what needed to be done. The students, I thought, would be the autumn. That would be the best plan. So in September, the start of our new school academic year, I got all of the things we've been doing. We've been doing so much. I didn't want it to be confusing. So we pulled all the learning frameworks together. We call this the Clevedon Eye. The centre about values, the next ring is about leadership, the next ring is about the learning frameworks. The teachers needed to understand the learning so that the iPad was the tool. Not the iPad dictates the learning. That was really important. What about the students? I pulled the centre of the eye out and I called it the Clevedon Way. All about values and all about leadership skills for learning. And then I tried to put them together. The framework is the I, the values are the way, and the students' leadership of self and others. That had to be entrenched in my mind to enable them to take responsibility for their learning. It's visible. I even put road signs up around the school, the Clevedon Way. And I knew there was something happening when I stopped a young boy. I said, "Excuse me, I'm afraid your top button's not done up." Oh, sorry, sir. It's not the Clevedon Way, is it? No. I knew if he'd have got the idea with the top button, I was probably going to be on a winner for e-safety and other things as well. So that was really important to me. But what about the teachers? They'd had more time. The Clevedon Learning Hub, that is our way of developing professional development. More and more, we do not send people out of school, other staff, teach other staff, work with other staff, coaching models, peer observation models. They build up their skills and confidence. Why? Because if you deliver, just as I'm doing today, it makes you ask questions of yourself. Why are we doing this? What is the impact? And how can I make it better? And that's what staff were doing through the hub. And digital learning and technology was an integral part of that. And the confidence started to fly. For the students, it was about their growth mindset. And we developed an approaches to learning. They had to go green. Green is the top level. Green is all about extending your learning beyond the classroom. It's about independent learning, doing things on your own. And it's about leading others in learning. And the students now have this approach in their mindset, and the digital technology really supports that. Now, this is trying to show you what it's like to hand out nearly 1,000 iPads at once. And logistically, you need to be really ready for that. This is launch day. This is December 2012, where everyone came and got their iPad and case and all the packages that go with it. What an exciting day that was. Families coming and telling me how that we'd opened up a whole new world for them. The access that they now had, the ability they had to learn together as a family was immense. But in my mind, I knew that we'd really prepared for this. We were ready. The system was working for us. As a result, Clevedon School now is a very, very different place in the way things are delivered and the way we operate our teaching and learning. As I alluded to at the start, the transfer of control has now been shared. Let me make it clear, the teacher is still in charge of what happens, but the control of the learning is shared. I spoke to the teachers. I said, you are the experts in the pedagogy. You have trained, you have taught, you are the experts. The students may well be the experts with the mobile technology. We all know students that can send texts and receive them without even taking the phone out of their pocket. I know many like that, my daughter included. But put the two together, there are no experts at the moment. It's a learning journey together, and that's what the teacher needed to know. The iPad is on the desk, the cover's shut, until such point we release the task and students have the choices to use whatever is in their remit, pencil case and so on. It's very important, as Peter described, we don't just substitute the learning, we enhance the learning. The iPad has so much to offer, it shouldn't just be used as a quick substitute. Students now have the option how to tackle the task, and more importantly, how to showcase the task, and sometimes that's individually, and sometimes it's collaboratively, sharing their learning experiences. And the other thing they've had to take responsibility is to help write and promote the acceptable use policy. And they deliver those messages in assemblies to other students. And they talk about, we have a privilege here, we shouldn't abuse it. And things like peer listener schemes and all those sorts of things support them to use the equipment appropriately. I'm going to run through a few examples now of why it's different. This little badge represents students who are digital leaders. The digital leaders run training programs for each other, but they run training for staff, because they are the experts in the technology. They run a training program for governors, who also have iPads, so they can learn about what's going on at the school. At break and lunchtime, they're always available in their special place to support everyone else. We've heard about iTunes U, many different subject areas using the iTunes U courses to support students so they can excuse me, go on individual learning pathways. Really, really important. The students themselves working together. When I walk around the school now, the doors are still open, which is great. I go into the classrooms. It's not the teacher telling me what's happening anymore. It's the students really keen to say, look, 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 this is what we're doing. This is what I'm doing next. The students are much more articulate about their own learning. One in particular, a year 9 boy, 14 years old, Lewis Smallwood, he has written 3 apps. They're all on the App Store, if you go and look at them now. That one is Black and Gold Radio. It's a student-run radio in the school. He's written the Clevedon Handbook and the Safeguarding app. Students will go beyond your expectations. They will push the barriers and develop things that you never thought possible. The iBook is tremendous. The visibility of learning, sharing with parents and other students have been tremendous, and we're able to write different curriculum schemes of learning through the iBook, which is tremendous. I very quickly found, with so many iPads, it wasn't any good having a member of staff stood in the hall at the back saying, "Any problems, I'll help." Ridiculous. I had to find a really dedicated room. So we call it the pad, and that's it in there. It looks a little bit like an app store with a training area, an administration area. I've now got an iPad project officer who deals with administration and things, so that everything is done to make sure it's smooth and everything is running as best that it possibly can. And what about the teachers? The teachers have much more confidence. The students are the digital leaders with the badges, but I've got a dozen or 15 digital directors. They are teachers who are taking on action research projects, running what we call innovation groups with other staff. We've got an ICANN with Clevedon group working as well. So the fires are burning, if I can use that phrase. There's 90 teachers. I need to make sure everybody is touched as many days as possible with a new learning experience for digital learning, to make sure the iPad is key. Here's my question that I had to ask. Have I achieved that? Well, I would say any journey does not have an end. It shouldn't have an end, really, in this case. We're 20% along that journey, possibly, because the possibilities are endless. But the students are certainly more inspired. They're motivated. They're really active in their learning. Confidence has risen, staff and students, I would say, and more importantly, the responsibility is shared. In many different ways, differentiation and challenge. The access is immediate. We use a phrase, low access, everyone can get to the task. High challenge, everyone is challenged to the highest level. And the iPad allows us that. And students can choose their individual pathways along that journey. For the teachers, it's made them think about their pedagogy, their delivery. How can I do this differently? How can I make sure I'm continually developing my practice? Assessment for learning in the class during the lesson. With the whole group, how are they progressing? With individuals, how are they progressing? Much stronger. Revision, collaborative work with our students taking exams, sharing revision, explain everything, all different sorts of apps that they can use. Even the classroom environment now is set up so that students can go and get resources off the wall with different codes and things like that. And we're really excited with our iBeacon project, where resources are pushed to the device as soon as you're in a certain location, and students are getting those devices as well. So that's really incredible. The key for me, though, is stay close and true to the values. I need to stay connected to that student-focused family learning vision that I had right at the beginning. That's really, really important to me. Now, I appreciate in your mind sometimes you're trying to picture what does this look like with iPads everywhere. That's what I was thinking. And I've just got a very, very short video to show you, to give you a little insight into what it actually does look like. Just a very small snapshot of what it's like with iPads, books, Bunsen burners on a table. Christmas morning is invisible now. I started with that sort of sense of nervousness, January the 10th, 2013. I can remember the day. Still, really, really anxious. But I have to say, those successes, the natural use of those students with their skills has taken us to a new level. The technology is still changing. It changes really fast. But the key for me are the values never change. The school is still the same as we set it up, student-focused achievement, even with 1,000, 1,200 iPads in. It's made us think very carefully about learning. We've really delved into what learning is all about and how it works, which is important. There is certainly ownership of the devices, which is key, but more importantly, maybe there's ownership of learning now, which is much more important, I believe. In terms of the community, we have engaged them. It's important that we kept the communication going for them, so they understood. But our family learning is now stronger than it's ever been. I would say the students are more informed. They're certainly making more decisive decisions, and they're really working as part of the community with a true sense of value. So I'm travelling up and down the motorway still. I still do 110 miles. And what I'm thinking about now is in the science block, the new one we got, the iPads are swinging from the roof and the students are measuring the speed, and it's just a real excitement in the learning. I'm thinking about the 1,200 families that now have access to that mobile technology and that learning experience. And I have to say, I owe it to one person in particular to help me make that decision, and it's about time you probably met her. This is the dog. She still doesn't answer me back, but she's much more settled, which is really good. And if you know about dogs, that's a Springer Spaniel, and I'm told they're the most difficult to train. But we took it on board, and we too were successful, which was really good. So in summary, I started out, and you possibly thought, is this a technology project John's going to tell us about? My answer to that is no. This is a values and learning transformation story. And if there's one part of this story that I've shared with you that's useful to you, then I'm really pleased. And I hope you've enjoyed listening to the journey of one school, a little school on the coast by Bristol. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, John, for sharing your story. A great story.